Welcome back to The Better Way, the Buildertrend podcast designed to teach you how to use construction software to achieve your goals. I'm your host, Marge Haley, and in today's episode, I'm joined again by David Livingston. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be back.
Yeah, I'm glad to talk to you again about Buildertrend Takeoff. Give me a little rundown again about your career path and how you've landed in this position for the listeners that weren't here for episode 1.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been at Buildertrend for the past 3 years, and my official title today is the Estimating and Takeoff Specialist.
We should change it to Guru.
Yeah, Guru or Magician, right?
Yeah.
I kind of am a magician. I just appeared on this next podcast,
yes.
Right? Look at that.
Yeah, take 2.
But before this, I owned and operated a hardscape and landscape construction company for 5 years. So yeah, I've been in the construction space for my entire professional career. One side of it, again, kind of on the blue collar, literally digging in the trenches and running a company and working with clients. And then the other side of it, white collar work, working with builders and helping them make their processes even better with software, which has been a cool change, and I love it. It's great.
Excellent. Well, we are lucky to have you at Buildertrend, and I'm very lucky to have you on this podcast. I'm excited to learn more about Buildertrend Takeoff.
Absolutely. Let's do this thing.
Let's go. I want to know more about your conversations with builders. You get to have this unique experience of talking to builders solely about Takeoff. And with those conversations, what are some of the ways that GCs can benefit from running their own Takeoff?
Yeah, in the last episode, and some of you probably are doing this currently, where you submit your plans directly to your subs or your suppliers for pricing. And the reality of that is, sure, you don't have to run the Takeoff, but you're kind of at the mercy of those suppliers and those subcontractors. And the conversations I've had, I'll give you an example of a guy. We were talking about drywall, and his drywaller, say, quoted him for, I don't know what the number was, I think 300 sheets of drywall or something. And he says, I ran my own calculations and it came out to 220. So whose numbers do you think are more correct? And I was like, well, if you scaled your image properly and you applied your assembly properly, I would argue to say yours are probably a lot closer than theirs are, right? And it just goes to show, so what he's doing is he's actually going to buy 300 sheets of drywall, and then he's going to count the leftover when it's done and see how close he was to the calculation and who was more correct. And basically, if you boil it down, like, again, you're at the mercy of these subcontractors and suppliers for pricing. So on the subcontractor front, say you build 100 homes a year and you're getting ripped by one of your subcontractors for $1,000 every time because they're overquoting you on, say, drywall. Very simple math could tell you that's $100,000 a year that otherwise you may not have to spend if you are willing to outreach to a broader subcontractor network and see if you could find somebody who's more honest or would be willing to give you pricing based on your calculations and not on their calculations. Same thing with like lumber suppliers, right? So I'll give you another example of a guy, and I did mention this in the previous podcast, but I think it speaks volumes to the purpose of this. In that case, he had a lumber supplier that took 6 weeks to run a Takeoff for him. And he's able to cut it down into 1 or 2 days once he learns and develops his understanding of our Takeoff system. So, with that allows you to sell jobs faster. You can get quotes out to, your homeowner, or your estimates out to your homeowner faster. And it allows you to get more competitive pricing. So you're not stuck with one supplier that does your Takeoff every single time. Maybe you venture out and say, get a price from 84 Lumber, and then you get a price from Home Depot. And you know what? You might be surprised that Home Depot might be a little bit more competitive. And again, you build 100 homes a year, you run your own Takeoff, save $1,000 on your lumber package. The savings are there.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really what it boils down to, is saving yourself money by putting in a little bit of extra effort to build your Takeoffs.
Absolutely. That's really interesting. It kind of just puts into perspective of don't rely on someone else to come up with your numbers, because it's no skin off their nose of adding in a couple extra sheets of drywall. They're not paying for it. You're paying for it plus markup. So it makes sense that you would want to keep that in-house and really be in control of those numbers.
Yep, or they over-order and then they take all the stuff back to them in their warehouse, and after a couple times doing jobs with you, the next time they do a job, they don't even have to buy material because they're just using all the leftovers that they've been overcharging you for the whole time, right? And you could boil that down to any trade. Absolutely.
So, and working with so many trades and relying on so many different people, it's hard to trust that many different companies.
Yeah, a lot of contractors have well-formed relationships with subs. And so even the most well-formed relationships, everybody's in it for money, right? And you might be surprised once you get in and you run your own takeoff, what those quantities are actually going to be. And you can feel assured that once you run a takeoff and you do it properly, your calculations are going to be, very correct within a negligible margin of error.
Wow. That's incredible. So we've talked about how GCs can benefit from Buildertrend Takeoff. Can other trades use Buildertrend Takeoff, or is this primarily focused on the GC?
That's a great question. So Takeoff primarily, if you think about it through the lens of the general contractor submitting that to the subcontractors for takeoff calculations, there's a huge purpose or a huge use case for subcontractors doing takeoffs through the system. So I'd say by and large, Buildertrend caters primarily to general contractors, but with the addition of Takeoff, I think there's a lot of opportunities for specialty trades, specifically like roofing. So our Takeoff system has a Google imaging, so it can take a satellite image and zoom in on a property, and it provides a pre-scaled image based on that satellite image. And then like a roofer could just trace out the roof and apply the proper quantities of shingles, underlayment, waterproofing. Really, you can even do gutter work, downspouts. There's about 1 million things you could do with it. And you can do it all from the comfort of a chair. Someone could say, hey, I need a quote on my roof. They give you their address, and you don't even really have to show up on site other than to know what the pitch of the roof is. I mean, you could really run a takeoff and a full calculation right there.
Wow. That's incredible. That saves a lot of time running around to homes and then manually measuring.
Yeah. And I think there's more than just roofing, right? So any exterior trade with that Google imaging service, it's pretty cool. So concrete contractors, right? I got a quote from a concrete guy, and I've had multiple people show up on my property to give me these quotes, and they've all highballed me a lot, because I ran my own takeoff calculation. So I know how many cubic yards of concrete it's supposed to take for my driveway. But anyways, imagine how much time they could save without, showing up at my property and bothering me. They could have just put it together on their computer and sent it.
Absolutely. That's great customer service too. Not having to take days off of work or, run home over lunch or whatever to try to meet them. So that enhances the experience for the customer too.
Yep. Decks, landscaping, hardscaping, pool companies, pool installations. We service a lot of pool contractors actually. So the ability to preset assemblies and put in like your parts for like your filters and like all your different PVC and your plumbing for pools. There's a huge application for that. So yeah, it's really exciting, the things it can do. And once you really understand it, you can do just about anything you want with it. That's
incredible. Thanks for sharing those stories.
Yep.
That's really interesting. Hearing, firsthand what these builders are going through and how it can benefit them. So, now I'm sure you hear a lot how time intensive it is to manually create a takeoff. Last episode, you talked a lot about the ruler and the calculations, and I'd like to hear more about that. What are some of the, why is it so time consuming, and how can Buildertrend to help with that?
Beyond just like the laborious process of taking a huge blueprint and measuring it with a ruler, I think what it really comes down to are the calculations and formulas, right? You almost have to be a math guru, to really be good at it, right? And to do these formulas all on your own and God forbid in your head, right? So, what's cool about our system is that we have pre-populated formulas inside of all of our parts. And so the way this is designed is the assembly has a parent level measurement value, whether it's a linear foot measurement. We can even do square footage of walls based on the height. We also can calculate area. And then finally we do count values. Now, based on the measurement being made on a plan, so I can measure out 300 square feet, the formulas inside of our parts will take that 300 square foot, for example, and convert it into cubic yards. So I'll give you an example of one of the assemblies that I think is super cool. So we have like a slab concrete assembly, and all you have to do on your foundation plan is measure out where you're going to put your slab, put in the type of rebar and everything you want in it, And based on the area, say it's a 300 square foot area, it'll automatically tell you how many cubic yards of concrete you need based on whatever depth you desire. Not only that, but then of course how much rebar you need, wire mesh, visqueen, the list goes on and on. So it's like that right there is the time saver. And one assembly could pack in 4 or 5 different parts and all of the formulas needed to calculate the total quantity of materials you need for those things. That is the time saver. And that I think is really where you get an extraordinary amount of value out of the system.
Yeah, absolutely. That's crazy that information's at your fingertips. It's really mind-blowing to me.
You. It's all put together for you.
Yeah.
And these things called our templated assemblies. Yeah, they come with the purchase or the subscription to Takeoff.
Wow. That's crazy. So tell me a little bit more about the types of equations or some of the equations that are pre-built that our builders could benefit from right away.
Oh, man. We have basically a CSI division list of templated assemblies for virtually anything, from all the way from asphalt framing, concrete. We go down into windows and doors. Well, those are pretty easy calculations because it's just quantities and their count values. Footings is another big one. Being able to just calculate total pour for footings based on a linear value measurement is extraordinarily powerful. Flooring, light fixtures, tile walls. I mean, think anything you can think of you're putting in a home, we have an assembly for it. Not only do we have an assembly for that, but with very slight adjustments, you can basically customize these assemblies and sort of piggyback these formulas to make really whatever you want. For example, a pretty common one is like people that pour footings want J-bars built in. So those are vertical pieces of rebar running through a footing. And our defaulted assembly doesn't really have it built out. But with a slight adaptation of a stud part from the previous podcast, if you heard talking about interior walls, it's just an on-center spacing value, so you can switch it and you can basically adapt it to be a vertical rebar. So, and maybe we're talking different languages once, depending on, some people are probably going to be like, geez, Dave, make it easier for me. But it is really exciting and it's so cool. And I just nerd out about it. So,
we love that here. I feel like I'm like fangirling over here over your knowledge of it. It's really incredible to hear you talk about it and feel the passion that you have for it. Okay. So you said count value, you said linear value. Can you tell me about what that means and all of the counts and ways to measure within our Takeoff software?
Yeah, so there's 3 basic Takeoff tools. There's area, linear, and count values. Now, the assemblies, what they do is they take that value and they run it through a formula, like the parts inside of the assembly runs a formula to calculate total quantity of materials. So say you run a linear measurement of footings, right? And it's 100 feet of footings. Well, our footings assembly or part is designed to take that linear foot and adjust the width of that footing, the depth of that footing, which then converts that into cubic yardage for the total amount of concrete you need for those footings. Not only that, but your rebar chairs, and everything you could possibly think of that's included in those footings. So, that's really what it is. Yeah, area, linear, and count values work as the parent level measurements to our templated assemblies and our parts.
Got it. Interesting. Very cool. So we're going to take it back to last episode, and you spoke to joist and roof rafter tooling that BT Takeoff has. And you mentioned that it's the only cloud-based software that can provide this. Can you go into more detail of what that means, why Buildertrend Takeoff is where it's at with this type of tooling, and just go into some detail, please?
Buildertrend Takeoff is where it's at.
Yeah, duh.
With everything. Joist and roof rafter tooling. So, what you can do basically is you can measure an area on a set of plans, and you can basically automatically populate the total amount of joists you need, say floor joists for a whole system, but all the rim boards as well as the individual components and the individual joist sets. You can also set up an on-center spacing. So it's really a huge time saver. So rather than sitting there and, again, the ruler or even just manually putting in a count value for every, say 2 by 10 by 12 or whatever you might need for your joists, Basically, you measure an area, and our tool automatically identifies using our parts catalog and database. It automatically fills in the proper amount and quantity of boards that you need to fit that space. It's truly fantastic. It's probably one of the coolest things. Not only that, but we can do it for roof rafters as well. So you can do a roof rafter with a pitch included, and you can basically adjust, the total quantity of roof rafters, and then you can do, of course, your ridge beams and things like that. It's a huge time saver. And again, it's funny. I learned from the original Takeoff team that we're probably the only cloud-based software that has joist and roof rafter tooling built in. A lot of them are like Windows-based or downloaded like applications because it's very demanding apparently.
Got it.
And the database is hard for them to use. So it's fantastic. It's super cool.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that. That's really intriguing that like we have that we can provide that and make it really easy for our builders. And not only, the linear, but, through roofing and all the sorts. So that's really cool.
Yeah. And don't forget, all that data sends over to the estimate too.
Yeah.
So very accurate job costing reports when you're looking at lumber packages and really anything else.
For sure, that it's that all in one feel. So we have clients all over the world. Is this a U.S. only service? Is this something that? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we have both imperial and metric measurement capabilities. Essentially we service anywhere in the U.S. as well as really anywhere in the world. Now, I will say our Imperial assembly sets are maybe a little bit more robust than the metric assembly sets that we have, as those are still going through beta and we're making them better. But if you're a metric user and you join up, we do have pre-populated templates available for you with pre-built calculations, so long as you scale in meters. And even in Canada, Canada, part of the construction process is done in Imperial, but the other day I learned that concrete apparently is exclusively done in metric. So a guy had to upload a page of his plan for his foundation, and part of it he did in Imperial for everything besides the concrete. Then everything with the concrete, he uploaded a separate page, scaled it in metric, and was able to output cubic meters instead of cubic yards.
Interesting. So you can have two different on one. That's not confusing or anything.
No, not at all. No,
making it easy for us.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I am sure that when you're working with builders, you hear oftentimes that like they may do one takeoff and then something may change. And do they have to run another one? How do those adjustments take place? And how does that flow back into Buildertrend, making it as easy as possible for our builders?
Yeah, in construction, things ebb and flow, things change, right? Code requirements are changing. It's really easy to go back into a pre-populated assembly. Say you measured the area for your concrete slab and you realized after you ran that it actually needs to be set at a 8-inch depth instead of 6 inches. Well, you don't have to redo the whole thing. You just open up that part and switch one of the variables to 8 inches and it's going to automatically populate quantities. Not only that, but then when that quantity or anything inside of Takeoff is adjusted, everything in Buildertrend is also adjusted. So it's like that harmony that I was talking about in that first piece or the first podcast. That's where it's at, and it's super easy to adjust on the fly. It's also really easy to adjust the templates to fit whatever need you want.
Got it. So it's adaptable.
Yeah, I mean, it's really at any point in time, whether it's at the point of applying the assembly, after you've already applied the assembly, or well before you ever apply it, you have 3 or 4 different instances of being able to adjust it and very easily populate the changes inside of Buildertrend and in Takeoff.
Excellent. That's a great answer. Taking it back to pre-plan and collaboration, how does Takeoff have involvement on that? And tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, this is something I think is really interesting and something that any contractor can really take advantage of is these formulas allow you to really create a standardized procedure and process behind your calculations. So it's no longer like guessing. Like back in the day with my landscape company, I would literally, go to somebody's property and I would just walk the perimeter and say, it's about 10 yards of mulch and it's going to be 4 hours of labor to put it in, or that's an underestimate, maybe 7 hours or whatever. It'd take me a day. And things like that cause a lot of problems because what you're guessing is clearly not going to be the reality of construction and of actually doing it. So by actually setting up a standard procedure, you can measure an area, say of mulch beds or say of concrete or say a linear footage of walls. And you can put in a parameter to say, for every 10 feet of walls I build, takes my crew 1 hour to build it. And then based on the actual time it takes them on that job, maybe you adjust it a little bit. Say, you know what, it actually took them 2 hours to do a 10-foot piece of wall. So you can become more and more accurate and really have a plan in place and a procedure for proper estimating, which is the goal of all of this.
Absolutely. That's incredible. I'm sure, working with builders as long as I had, a lot of people just said, well, I just assumed this is how many pieces of drywall I needed, or this is how many 2x4s I needed. And it's just that guessing is a scary thing here.
You know what assuming does, Marge.
Yes, I've heard that line a time or two, and I'm guilty of it.
With my company, my previous company, I was victim to that all the time, and I never learned from my mistakes.
No.
I think this is a cool opportunity for anybody, especially if you're a general contractor that self-performs some of the labor for this. Being able to put up proper, labor quantities and really get a good report or a good baseline for your budgeting, I think that you would be foolish not to want to do it, right? Yeah. Currently the Takeoff package really, in all things considered, and the money it saves you based on all the things we've talked about, it's really not that expensive.
No.
And honestly, we could probably charge a lot more for it. And I'm not in sales or anything, I have no opinion on that. I just support the product, but I know how much power it has.
Right. Yeah. You're really passionate about the product and understand its value to our contractors. So, putting a price tag on that, is difficult, but if it brings them value and it saves them time and money, why not?
Yeah. Save $1,000 by checking your bids on 100 homes, or say 50 homes a year.
Yeah.
I mean, 5 homes a year,
right.
You're basically paying for the software.
Absolutely. That's a great point. So when I was training clients, I pushed the bid feature a lot. I told clients to use our bid feature to get numbers from our subcontractors. Tell me about how, with our new estimate and with our new Takeoff software and then now with our original bids feature, how does that all go together and how can we get numbers to our subs quicker by using those 3 tools?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of benefits it has, and there's basically, if you've ever been in Buildertrend's estimate, or if you're a new user or somebody that is considering Buildertrend and you're watching this, I'll kind of explain it in a simple way. So every line item in Buildertrend has the ability to be populated as a bid, and you can choose multiple line items in the estimate to ask pricing for. So you could ask for a lump sum price for drywall, or you could tell them, we need 500 sheets. What's your price per sheet to install this, right? So basically, using line item actions, using real-time data that's being created and calculated in Takeoff, you can then take those line items from Buildertrend and then line item action them to create bid packages and release those bid packages. Your subs don't have to be active in Buildertrend. It's just like sending out an email. The only difference, and probably the most exciting part, a little bit away from Takeoff, but I'm the estimating and Takeoff specialist, so I have some leeway here. But for estimating, right? So when that bid comes in and you approve it, it will automatically replace the line item details in the estimate with the actual approved price from that bid. So in effect, what you're doing is creating a fully populated estimate with real pricing from your subs with very minimal effort, really.
Yeah.
And then you can use that for a client-facing estimate.
Accurate numbers, accurate dollar amounts. That's the name of the game.
It's the name of the game.
Yeah, that's excellent. Well, we learned a lot today. Thank you so much for being here. I am just blown away with your knowledge and with the features that Buildertrend provides. This is really cool, and I'm excited to actually learn more about this.
Absolutely, yeah. And anybody that's watching the podcast, I'll put a little plug in for my own thing.
Absolutely.
Here. We do webinars every week, so they're conducted by myself and our Takeoff support specialist, Tristan. And so, you can join us Monday, Wednesday, or Friday for our basics and advanced session. We do basics in the morning and advanced in the afternoon. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays, we mix it up a little bit. Like this week, we did joist and roof rafter tooling, and then we also did a framing Q&A. And today and this afternoon, actually, I don't know when this will be out for people. This afternoon, we're doing this thing called Takeoff and Estimating the Bigger Picture. Really understanding not like the what of like how to click a button, what does it do, why we're doing it, why is this important, which we talked a lot about those things here today. So yeah, it's really exciting. So if you want to join or you want to learn more, or say you sign up and you want to start your learning path, the webinars is the way to go.
Excellent.
You can meet with us.
Cool. Well, check David out on his webinars. They're super informative. Obviously, he has a wealth of knowledge on this topic and can really help you and your business get up and running with Builders and Takeoff and utilizing our estimate as well. I'm so happy that David was here to join us today. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks, Marge. It's been a pleasure.
This episode was excellent. We got a lot of great information. I'm excited for our builders to listen and really understand what Buildertrend Takeoff is and how it can benefit them and their company. For you listening out there, thank you so much for being here. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to The Better Way, wherever you get your podcasts. Next time, we'll be talking templates and how they're the best way to save your team time in Buildertrend. You won't want to miss it.